My niece humiliated my son and me at her birthday dinner, claiming we didn't belong at their table. The family laughed. I left silently, then permanently cut the funding for their entire lifestyle. When the bills arrived, the laughter stopped forever. This is where the story truly begins, and you won't want to miss what happens. Make sure you're subscribed to see it through to the end. We're always curious. Where in the world are you all watching from today? Let us know in the comments. The air inside Le Jardin was thick with the scent of roasted duck, expensive perfume, and the kind of quiet, ambient jazz that suggests you are paying for the atmosphere just as much as the food. It was the sort of place where the napkins were made of heavy linen that felt like silk against your fingertips, and the waiters moved with a synchronized, ghostly efficiency, appearing only when a glass was half empty. I adjusted the collar of my son Archie's button-down shirt. He was fidgeting, his fingers pulling at the stiff fabric of his cuffs. At 11 years old, Archie was a boy of soft edges and deep, contemplative silences. He didn't like crowds, and he certainly didn't like the sensory overload of a high-end restaurant on a Saturday night, but he was trying. He was trying because I had asked him to, and because he loved his cousin, Rebecca. "Is it okay, Mom?" he whispered, looking up at me with large, anxious eyes behind his wire-rimmed glasses. "Do I look all right?" "You look handsome, Arch," I said, smoothing his hair back. "Just like a gentleman, Rebecca is going to be so happy to see you." I believed that. I truly, foolishly believed that. Tonight was Rebecca's 21st birthday. It was a milestone event, one that my sister, Vanessa, had been planning for months. And by planning, I mean she had been sending me links to venues, caterers, and designer dress boutiques with little notes attached like, "Becca loves this, wouldn't it be perfect?" Or, "Can we make this happen?" I always made it happen. That was my role. I was the engine that kept the family machinery running, the invisible hand that swiped the credit card so Vanessa, her husband Ryan, and their daughter Rebecca could live the life they felt they deserved. I was a forensic accountant by trade. I spent my days hunting down hidden assets and exposing financial fraud for high-stakes corporate litigation. I was good at it. I made a lot of money doing it. But when it came to my family, I was blind. "Come on," I said, taking Archie's clammy hand. "Let's go find them." We navigated through the maze of tables. The restaurant was dimly lit, illuminated mostly by elaborate crystal chandeliers that cast a golden glow over the patrons. I spotted them near the back, a long, rectangular table set for 20 people, right in front of the floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the city's skyline. They looked like royalty. Vanessa was wearing a shimmering emerald gown that I knew cost more than my first car. Ryan was holding court at the head of the table, laughing loudly at something, a glass of scotch in his hand. And there was Rebecca, the birthday girl, glowing in a custom-made silver dress, surrounded by a flock of her university friends. They were all beautiful, polished, and loud. As we approached, I felt that familiar knot of inadequacy tighten in my chest. I was wearing a simple navy pants suit, professional, clean, but decidedly unglamorous. Archie was in his department store slacks and a blue shirt. We looked like exactly what we were, the sensible relatives. "Happy birthday," I called out, putting a smile on my face that didn't quite reach my eyes. The conversation at the table didn't stop immediately. It tapered off, like a record slowing down, as heads turned toward us. Rebecca looked up from her phone. She scanned me, then lowered her gaze to Archie, who was shrinking behind my leg. "Oh," Rebecca said. Her voice wasn't warm. It wasn't hostile exactly, but it was flat. "You guys are here." "Of course we're here," I said, stepping forward. I reached into my bag and pulled out the small, velvet-wrapped box containing the vintage diamond earrings she had hinted at for weeks. "We wouldn't miss it. Happy 21st, sweetie." I moved to hug her, but she remained seated, offering a half-hearted cheek for me to peck. She didn't take the gift. She just gestured vaguely to the table. "Thanks, Aunt Amelia, you can put it there." I placed the box on the tablecloth, feeling a slight sting. "So, where are we sitting?" I asked, looking for our place cards. I scanned the names near the center, near the family. Vanessa. Ryan, Tyler, Chloe, Brad. I didn't see Amelia or Archie. Vanessa looked up from her wine, her eyes glassy. Oh, Amelia, you made it. Good. She waved a manicured hand toward the far end of the room, away from the window, near the service doors where the waiters were rushing in and out with trays of dirty dishes. There was a small, round tea. Woe-top table pushed against the wall, completely separated from the main party. We're a little tight on space at the main table, Vanessa said, her voice breezy and unconcerned. Rebecca invited a few more sorority sisters last minute, and you know how it is. We figured you and Archie would be more comfortable over there anyway. It's quieter. I looked at the main table. There were empty chairs, at least 3 of them. Vanessa, I said, keeping my voice low so Archie wouldn't panic. There are empty seats right there, next to you. Those are for Ryan's business partners, Ryan chimed in, not even looking at me. He was busy pouring wine for a young man in a tailored suit. Important networking tonight, Amelia. You understand business. I understand family, I said, my voice hardening slightly. This is a family birthday dinner, one that, I might add, I deposited the deposit for. Rebecca sighed, a loud, theatrical sound that drew the attention of her friends. She spun in her chair to face me, her expression twisting into something ugly. The mask of the sweet niece slipped, revealing the entitled young woman I had funded for years. God, Aunt Amelia, why do you have to make everything a thing? Rebecca snapped. Look around. Look at my friends. Look at this vibe. She gestured to the table of glittering, laughing youths and her polished parents. Then she pointed a long, acrylic nail at Archie, who was now trembling, sensing the tension. Archie is twitchy, Rebecca said, her voice carrying clearly over the music. He hums, he rocks back and forth. It's weird. It kills the mood. I'm 21, I'm trying to have a sophisticated evening, and I don't want to babysit. He's your cousin, I whispered, shock freezing my blood. He worships you. He's a buzzkill, she countered cruelly. She looked me up and down, sneering at my suit. And frankly, you don't exactly fit the aesthetic either. You look like you just came from an audit. A few of her friends snickered. Ryan chuckled, a low, rumbling sound of approval. Vanessa just took a sip of her wine, looking away as if she couldn't be bothered to intervene. So, Rebecca finished, turning back to her friends, dismissing us entirely. Just sit at the little table, eat your free dinner, and let us enjoy the night. People like you have no place at our table. People like us, I repeated, the words tasting like ash. Yeah, she said over her shoulder. Boring, depressing, you know, the help. The table erupted in laughter. It wasn't a nervous titter, it was a roar. Ryan slapped the table. Vanessa hid a smile behind her glass. The friends cackled. I stood there, frozen, feeling Archie's hand squeeze mine so hard his fingernails dug into my palm. He was looking at the floor, his face burning red, tears silently tracking down his cheeks. He had heard every word. He understood that his existence was the punchline. In that moment, something inside me didn't just break, it evaporated. The unconditional love, the obligation, the years of justifying their behavior, it all vanished, replaced by a cold, crystalline clarity. I looked at Vanessa, my sister, who I had carried through her divorce, her bankruptcy, and her depressions. She was laughing. I looked at Ryan, the brother-in-law whose failed investments I had quietly bilaid out to save their house. He was laughing. I looked at Rebecca, the girl whose tuition, car, and apartment I paid for. She was laughing the hardest. The betrayal was worse than the diagnosis of a terminal illness. It was the realization that the cancer was my own family. I didn't scream. I didn't flip the table. I didn't demand an apology. My profession had trained me well in the art of emotional suppression. When you find the smoking gun in a ledger, you don't yell at the paper. You document it, and you prepare the indictment. I knelt down so I was eye level with Archie. Hey, I whispered, my voice steady, though my heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. We're leaving. But the dinner, Archie stammered, wiping his eyes with the back of his hand. You paid. I know, I said. And now we're going to go get pizza, just us, anywhere you want. I stood up. I didn't look at the main table again. I didn't say goodbye. I simply turned my back on the laughter, took my son's hand, and walked out of the restaurant. The maitre d', a man named Henry who knew me from the booking, looked concerned as we passed the host's stand. Madame, is everything all right? The first course hasn't even been served. We had a change of plans, Henry, I said calmly. Please ensure the bill for table 4 is given to Mr. Ryan and Mrs. Vanessa. I will not be covering it. Henry's eyebrows shot up. But the reservation was under your card. Cancel the authorization, I said, handing him a $20 bill as a tip for his trouble. Split the check among the guests at the table. Do not charge my card for a single cent. If they have an issue, they can call the police. Very well, madame, he said, sensing the steel in my tone. We walked out into the cool night air. The city sounds, honking taxis, distant chatter, the hum of traffic, felt overwhelming but also liberating. We walked 2 blocks in silence until we reached my car. I buckled Archie in, checking his face in the rearview mirror. He was pale, staring out the window at the passing streetlights. Mom, he asked quietly as I merged onto the highway, is there something wrong with me? The question hit me like a physical blow. I gripped the steering wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. No, Archie, I said firmly. There is absolutely nothing wrong with you. You are kind and smart and observant. There is something very, very wrong with them, and I am so sorry I let them make you feel that way. It stops today, I promise. He nodded slowly, trusting me, but the hurt in his eyes remained. We went to a small, hole-in-the-wall pizza place near our house. It had checkered tablecloths and smelled of garlic and dough. We ate a large pepperoni pizza and drank root beer. We didn't talk about Rebecca. We talked about Minecraft, about his science project, about the upcoming school break. Slowly, the color returned to his cheeks. By the time we got home, it was nearly 10:00 p.m. I tucked Archie into bed, reading him a chapter of the fantasy novel we were working through. Once his breathing evened out and he fell asleep, I walked into my home office and closed the door. I sat in the dark for a moment, the silence of the house wrapping around me. My phone buzzed on the mahogany desk. Then it buzzed again, and again. I picked it up. Vanessa, 10:15 p.m., where the hell did you go? Henry brought us the bill. It's over $4,000. You embarrassed us in front of everyone. Vanessa, 10:17 p.m. Ryan had to put it on 3 different credit cards. This is insane, Amelia. You can't just storm off because of a little joke. Rebecca is crying. You ruined her night. Vanessa, 10:20 p.m. You're still sending the transfer for her rent tomorrow, right? It's the 1st. Don't be petty. I stared at the screen, the blue light illuminating the room. The audacity was breathtaking. Even after treating us like garbage, after relegating us to the shadows, they still felt entitled to the fruits of my labor. They thought I was a bottomless well, a resource to be mined and mocked simultaneously. They thought I was weak because I had always been generous. They thought I was stupid because I had always been kind. I opened my laptop and logged into my secure banking portal. The screen glowed with rows of numbers, accounts, and scheduled transfers. I navigated to the Recurring Transfers tab. There it was. Rebecca, rent living expenses, $3,500 month. Below that, Vanessa, assistance, $2,000 month. And the auto pay for the lease on the luxury SUV Vanessa drove, and the tuition payments for Rebecca's private university. I typed a reply to Vanessa. My fingers moved calmly, deliberately. Me, people like me don't help. I hit send. Then, I turned my attention to the banking portal. They thought the humiliation at the restaurant was the end of the story. They thought they could bully me back into submission with guilt trips about ruining the night. But they had forgotten one crucial thing. I wasn't just an aunt with a checkbook. I was a forensic accountant. I knew where every single dollar I sent them went. And for the last 6 months, I had been noticing discrepancies in the tuition invoices Rebecca forwarded to me, strange formatting, mismatched dates. I had ignored it, chalking it up to administrative errors, blinding myself with trust. Tonight, the blindfold was off, and I was about to go looking. To understand the magnitude of what I was about to do, you have to understand the history. I am 5 years younger than Vanessa. Growing up, she was the star, the beauty queen, the socialite, the one our parents doted on. I was the smart one, which in our household was a polite way of saying the invisible one. When our parents died in a car accident 12 years ago, they left behind a mountain of debt and a small, confusing estate. Vanessa fell apart. She was pregnant with Rebecca at the time, married to her first husband who left shortly after. I was the one who stepped in. I was 30, just starting my firm, working 80-hour weeks. I paid off our parents' debts. I helped Vanessa get an apartment. When she met Ryan 3 years later, I paid for their wedding because Vanessa cried about how she deserved a fairy tale after so much tragedy. Ryan was a smooth talker. He claimed to be a venture capitalist, which I quickly learned meant he gambled on high-risk startups with other people's money. He was charming, handsome in a rugged way, and completely allergic to actual work. He liked the idea of wealth, the aesthetic of it, but lacked the discipline to earn it. Over the decade, the dynamic solidified. I worked, they lived. I paid for Rebecca's braces, her ballet lessons, her riding camps. When she got into a prestigious private university 3 hours away, I covered the tuition that financial aid didn't touch, which was almost all of it, because Ryan refused to fill out the forms correctly. I paid for her off-campus apartment because the dorms were too distracting. I did it because I wanted family. I wanted Archie to have cousins, to have a tribe. I was a single mother. Archie's father had passed away from an aneurysm when Archie was 2, and I was terrified of leaving my son alone in the world. I bought their love, or at least their tolerance, because I thought I was buying Archie a future support system. Tonight, I realized I had bought him nothing but predators. I opened the folder on my laptop labeled Family Support. It contained PDFs of every invoice, every request, every receipt Vanessa or Rebecca had ever sent me. I pulled up the latest tuition bill Rebecca had emailed me 2 weeks ago. It looked official. The university logo was crisp. The line items for lab fees and library access were detailed. The total was $22,000 for the semester. I opened a second window and navigated to the university's public bursar page. I downloaded the official fee schedule. I zoomed in on the PDF Rebecca had sent. My forensic eye, honed by years of spotting forged ledgers in Fortune 500 companies, caught it immediately. The font on the total due line was Arial, while the rest of the document was Times New Roman. The kerning on the numbers was slightly off. I opened the metadata of the PDF. Author, Ryan MacBook Pro last modified. Adobe Photoshop CS6. My stomach dropped, not with nausea, but with the heavy, cold stone of confirmation. They weren't just ungrateful, they were criminals. I started digging deeper. I pulled up the book receipts Vanessa had sent me last month, $800 for textbooks. I cross-referenced the ISBN numbers listed on the receipt. 3 of them weren't textbooks. They were ISBNs for high-end electronics, a gaming console, a designer handbag. I looked at the car lease. I was paying for a Range Rover that Vanessa claimed was safer for driving Rebecca back and forth to school. I checked the mileage logs from the service receipts they sent for reimbursement. The car had put on 25,000 miles in 1 year. Rebecca's school was 100 miles away. They weren't driving to school. They were taking road trips. The picture was forming, and it was grotesque. For years, while I drove a 5-year-old sedan and shopped at discount grocers to maximize my savings for Archie's future, they had been systematically skimming, inflating, and forging documents to siphon extra cash from me. Ryan wasn't a venture capitalist. He was a fraudster, and his victim was his sister-in-law. Vanessa wasn't a struggling mother. She was an accomplice. And Rebecca, the girl who mocked my son for his weirdness, she was laundering money through fake school expenses to fund a party lifestyle. I sat back in my chair, the glow of the screen reflecting in my glasses. It was 2:00 a.m. The house was silent, but my mind was a roar of calculations. I had the leverage, I had the proof. If I cut them off, they would scream. They would slander me to the extended family. They would play the victim. But if I exposed them, if I treated them not as family, but as the hostile entities they were. I picked up my phone. I had a contact, a shark of a lawyer named David who I worked with on fraud cases. It was too late to call, so I sent an email. Subject, urgent personal matter, fraud investigation/eviction, proceedings attachment, preliminary evidence zip. David, I need you to draft a cease and desist and prepare for immediate litigation regarding a breach of trust and misappropriation of funds. The opposing parties are my sister and her husband. I also need to look into the eviction laws for a property where I am the guarantor. Let's talk at 7 a.m. I hit send. The sadness was gone. The sister who wanted to be loved was gone. In her place sat the forensic accountant, and she was about to audit their entire lives. The morning sun that filtered into my kitchen the next day didn't feel like the start of a new beginning. It felt like the harsh lighting of an interrogation room. I hadn't slept. I had spent the hours between 3:00 a.m. and dawn printing documents, highlighting bank statements, and organizing a timeline of betrayal that spanned 5 years. Archie was still asleep. I made a pot of strong coffee, the dark liquid swirling into the carafe like oil. My phone was silent, but only because I had blocked Vanessa, Ryan, and Rebecca temporarily. I needed clarity before I dealt with their inevitable noise. At 8:00 a.m. sharp, I walked into the glass-walled conference room of Stern and Associates. David, a man with a mind like a steel trap and a suit that cost more than my first mortgage, was already. There, he had the file I'd emailed him open on the table. He wasn't smiling. "Amelia," he said, standing to shake my hand. His grip was firm, grounding. "I read the attachment. Please tell me this is a hypothetical scenario for a seminar you're running." "I wish," I said, sliding into the leather chair opposite him. I placed a thick binder on the table. "This is the hard copy. I went back further. 5 years of tax returns, bank transfers, and reimbursement requests." David opened the binder. He flipped through the pages, his eyes scanning the highlighted rows. He was silent for a long time, the only sound in the room the hum of the HVAC system and the turning of pages. "The tuition invoices," he said finally, stopping on a page covered in red ink. "You caught the font discrepancy." "Yes, but look at the wire routing number on the second page," I pointed out, leaning forward. "I cross-referenced it this morning. That's not the University of Pennsylvania's bursar account. It's a private LLC registered in Delaware." David adjusted his glasses, peering closer. "R&V Holdings, Ryan and Vanessa." "Exactly," I said, my voice cold. "I've been sending $22,000 a semester directly into a shell company my brother-in-law controls. They pay the actual tuition, which is significantly lower because Rebecca is only taking 9 credits, not 15, and pocket the difference. Plus, they're skimming the housing allowance." David leaned back, exhaling a long breath. "This isn't just family drama, Amelia. This is wire fraud. It's forgery. Depending on the total amount, we're looking at grand larceny." "How much?" "Conservative estimate?" I looked him in the eye. $140,000 over 4 years. That includes the car lease payments for a vehicle they use for personal vacations, the medical bills for procedures that never happened, and the tuition skim. David closed the binder. "Okay, what do you want to do? We can go to the police. We can file a civil suit. We can garnish wages, though I doubt Ryan has any wages to garnish." "I want to sever the limb," I said. "I want them out of my life, and I want my name off everything. The apartment lease for Rebecca, I'm the guarantor. The car? It's in my name as a cosigner. If I stop paying, my credit takes the hit. We can fix that, David said, pulling a legal pad toward him. We draft a letter notifying them of the immediate termination of all financial support. We notify the landlord and the leasing company that the primary payer is ceasing contribution due to fraudulent activity. We give them 30 days to refinance or vacate, and we leverage the criminal evidence. Leverage. We tell them, you assume the debt, you release Amelia from the leases, or we hand this binder to the district attorney. David looked at me, his expression serious. But you have to be ready, Amelia. When you corner a rat, it doesn't apologize, it bites. Let them bite, I said, thinking of Archie's tear-stained face in the restaurant. I'm wearing armor. I spent the rest of the day in a fugue state of productivity. I called the leasing office for Rebecca's apartment. The manager, a woman named Linda, was confused. But Mrs. Hart, Linda said, the rent has always been paid on time by you. Why the sudden change? Because, Linda, I said, keeping my voice professional, I have reason to believe the tenant is subletting the second bedroom against the lease terms, and I will no longer be liable for the property. Subletting, Linda paused. Well, we have seen a lot of foot traffic, parties. I'm sending over a formal notice from my attorney, I said. I want my name off the lease immediately. Next was the car dealership, then the university registrar. With every call, I wasn't just closing a wallet, I was dismantling the stage set of their lives. By 4:00 p.m., I was back home. The silence in the house was heavy. I unblocked their numbers. My phone exploded instantly, 37 missed calls, 52 text messages. The first one that came through was from Ryan. Payment didn't go through. Landlord called, fix this now. The second was from Vanessa. Amelia, pick up the phone. Are you insane? Rebecca is hysterical. I didn't reply. I went to the kitchen and started chopping vegetables for dinner. Carrots, celery, onions. The rhythmic thud-thud-thud of the knife against the wooden board was soothing. I was waiting. I knew they wouldn't just text. They were entitled. They believed the world owed them an explanation. At 5:30 p.m., the doorbell rang. It wasn't a polite ring. It was a pounded, aggressive demand. Mom, Archie called from the living room, his voice trembling. Stay there, honey, I said, wiping my hands on a towel. Put your headphones on. I walked to the door. Through the frosted glass, I could see two distorted shapes. I took a deep breath, unlocked the deadbolt, and opened the door. Vanessa and Ryan stood on my porch. They looked dish. Eviled manic. Vanessa's makeup was smeared, and Ryan was sweating through his polo shirt. What is wrong with you? Vanessa screamed before I could even say hello. She pushed past me into the foyer. Ryan followed, closing the door behind him with a slam that shook the frame. You can't just cut us off, Ryan shouted, his face flushing a deep, dangerous red. Do you have any idea what you've done? The landlord called Rebecca threatening eviction. The bursar put a hold on her transcripts. I stood in the center of the hallway, my arms crossed. I didn't retreat. I didn't offer them a drink. I looked at them with the clinical detachment I used when interviewing an embezzling CFO. Hello, Vanessa. Hello, Ryan, I said calmly. I assume this is about the text I sent last night. The text? Vanessa laughed hysterically. You said people like me don't help. What is that? Some petty revenge because Rebecca made a joke? She's a child, Amelia. You're ruining her life over a bad mood. It wasn't a joke, I said. It was the truth. You made it very clear that Archie and I are second-class citizens in this family. We are the help. And the help has resigned. You agreed to pay, Ryan pointed a finger in my face. We have a verbal contract. You promised to cover her tuition until she graduates. You can't just renege because your feelings are hurt. I'll sue you for breach of promise. I almost laughed. Please do, Ryan. I'd love to go to court. Don't mock me, he sneered. Now get your laptop. Transfer the rent, transfer the tuition, and add an extra $2,000 for the stress you've caused my daughter today. Do it, and we'll forget this tantrum ever happened. No, I said. The silence that followed was absolute. They stared at me as if I had spoken in a foreign language. What did you say? Vanessa whispered. I said no, but since you're here, I walked over to the entry table where I had placed a manila envelope. I picked it up. I have something for you. I pulled out the single sheet of paper. The side-by-side comparison of the tuition, invoice they sent me, and the actual fee schedule from the university, along with the bank routing information for R&V Holdings. What is this? Ryan snatched the paper. I watched his eyes scan the document. I saw the moment the blood drained from his face. His arrogance collapsed, replaced by the sheer, primal terror of a man caught red-handed. R&V Holdings, I said softly. Clever name, not clever enough to hide the routing number. Vanessa looked over his shoulder. She gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Amelia, You forged the invoices, I stated, my voice cutting through her stammering. You used Photoshop to alter the amounts. You created a shell company to intercept the funds. That is fraud, Ryan. That is a felony. It was a temporary thing, Ryan stammered, backing away, the paper CR-pling in his fist. We were investing it. We were going to pay it back with interest. The market is just down right now, Amelia, you know how it is. I know exactly how it is, I said. I investigate people like you for a living. There is no investment. There is only a leased Range Rover, designer clothes, and dinners at Le Jardin that I paid for. We're family, Vanessa shrieked, tears streaming down her face now, not tears of remorse, but tears of panic. How could you spy on us? How could you invade our privacy like this? You stole from me, I said, my voice rising for the first time. You stole from Archie. Every dollar you siphoned off for your status was a dollar I took from my son's future. And then you had the audacity to laugh at him, to call him weird, to sit us at the servants' table while you drank wine paid for with my stolen money. It wasn't stealing, Ryan yelled, desperate now. It was. Reallocation. Rebecca needed things. She has an image to maintain. You don't understand, you don't run in our circles. And thank God for that, I said, because your circle is a prison cell waiting to happen. I opened the door. Get out, I said. Amelia, please, Vanessa sobbed, grabbing my arm. Please don't do this. If you stop paying, we lose the apartment. Rebecca will have to drop out. We have loans, Amelia, high-interest loans. We need that cash flow. Get out, I repeated, shaking her off. You have 30 days to get my name off the lease and the car. If you don't, my lawyer hands this file to the district attorney. And Ryan, I suggest you don't gamble whatever you have left. Ryan looked at me with pure hatred. You're a bitter, lonely witch, he spat. You've always been jealous of Vanessa. You think your money makes you better than us? You're nothing. I'm the one holding the door, I said. Goodbye. I slammed the door in their faces. I locked it. Then I engaged the deadbolt. I leaned my forehead against the cool wood, my heart racing. It was done. The confrontation was over. But I knew, deep down, that the war had just begun. From the top of the stairs, a small voice spoke. Did they really steal from us, Mom? I looked up. Archie was sitting on the top step, his headphones around his neck. He had heard everything. I walked up the stairs and sat next to him, wrapping my arm around his shoulders. Yes, honey, they did. Are they going to jail? I don't know, I said honestly, but they aren't going to hurt us anymore. If I thought the confrontation would silence them, I underestimated their desperation. The next week was a siege. It started with the flying monkeys, the extended family members recruited by Vanessa to pressure me. My Aunt Linda, who I hadn't spoken to in 3 years, called to tell me I was being cruel and unchristian. My cousin Mike sent a Facebook message saying, I heard you're trying to make Rebecca homeless. That's low, even for you. Vanessa had spun a narrative. In her version, I was a controlling tyrant who used money to manipulate them, and when they didn't bow down enough, I cut them off out of spite. She left out the forgery. She left out the theft. I didn't engage. I simply forwarded every harassing message to David to add to the file. But the stakes escalated on Tuesday. I was at work when I received a notification from my credit monitoring service. New inquiry, Chase Sapphire Reserve. I logged in immediately. An application had been submitted in my name using my social security number with an address listed as Vanessa's house. Ryan was doubling down. He wasn't just trying to bully me, he was trying to steal my identity to keep their ship afloat. I called David. "Freeze everything," I said, my voice shaking with rage, "and file the police report for identity theft, today." "We have them, Amelia," David said. "This is the nail in the coffin, but there's something else. My investigator found something interesting about Rebecca's enrollment status." "What?" "She's not on academic probation, Amelia. She's not even a student." I stopped typing. "What do you mean?" "She withdrew 4 months ago," David said. "She's been living in that apartment, driving that car, and taking your tuition money, but she hasn't attended a class since October. The university confirmed it this morning. She was expelled for academic dishonesty, plagiarism." The room spun. It wasn't just Ryan and Vanessa. Rebecca, the girl I had held as a baby, the girl I tried to buy earrings for, was an active participant. She had been forging her grades. She had been emailing me updates about finals week while she was partying on my dime. That evening, the doorbell didn't ring. Instead, my phone lit up with a FaceTime request from Rebecca. I stared at it, then I answered. Rebecca's face filled the screen. She looked terrible. Her eyes were puffy, her makeup gone. She was sitting in her car, my car. "Aunt Amelia," she sniffled. "Please, you have to stop this. My landlord put an eviction notice on the door today. Everyone can see it. It's so embarrassing." "Hello, Rebecca," I said. "Mom said you're having a breakdown," Rebecca said, her voice trembling. "She said you're confused. Look, just unlock the account, okay? I have finals next week. I can't study if I'm being evicted." "Finals?" I asked quietly. "For which classes?" "You know, psychology, art history." She looked away from the camera. The lie came so easily to her, it was a reflex. "David spoke to the registrar today," I said. Rebecca froze. Her mouth opened slightly, then closed. The tears stopped instantly. "You were expelled in October," I said. "Plagiarism." Rebecca's face hardened. The transformation was identical to the one at the restaurant. The victim act dropped, revealing the snarling entitlement underneath. "So what?" she snapped. "I was going to re-enroll. You have so much money, Amelia. You sit on that pile of cash like a dragon. Why do you care if I took a semester off? I deserve a life too." "You deserve what you earn," I said, "and you have earned nothing but shame." "You're a B*TCH, she spat. "Mom was right. You're just a jealous, dried-up old woman who—" "I'm the woman who is reporting the car stolen tomorrow morning," I interrupted. "Because the lease is in my name, and I am revoking permission for you to drive it. If you are not at the dealership by 10:00 a.m. to surrender the keys, the police will pick you up." "You wouldn't," she sneered. "Try me." I hung up. My heart was pounding, but not from fear. It was the adrenaline of the endgame. 10 minutes later, Vanessa sent a text. It was a photo. It was a picture of Archie, taken from a distance at his school playground that day. "Vanessa, it would be a shame if everyone at Archie's school found out his mother is a psychotic abuser who attacks her own family. I'm on the PTA board, Amelia. I know all the moms. Don't make me destroy his social life too." They had crossed the final line. They had threatened my son. I didn't reply. I forwarded photo to David. Me, they just threatened a minor. Get the restraining order ready and release the evidence to the family. "David, are you sure? Once we send this email, there's no going back." I looked at Archie, who was sitting on the rug, building a complex Lego structure, humming softly to himself. He was safe. He was good, and I would burn the world down to keep him that way. Me, send it all. 2 days after the threat against Archie, I received a summons. It wasn't a subpoena, though those were being drafted by David as we spoke. It was a text from Aunt Linda, the matriarch of the extended family, the keeper of the peace, and, unfortunately, Vanessa's biggest enabler. Aunt Linda, Sunday, 2:00 p.m. My house. The whole family will be there. We are going to sit down, talk this out like adults, and fix this mess before you tear this family apart permanently. Do not be late. It was a trap. I knew it. Vanessa had rallied the troops. She had likely spent the last 48 hours spinning a sob story about her cruel, wealthy sister who was evicting a struggling student and starving her own niece. They wanted an intervention. They wanted to shame me into submission by using the one thing they thought I craved, their approval. But they didn't understand who was coming to dinner. They were expecting Amelia, the doormat. They were getting Amelia, the auditor. I arrived at Aunt Linda's house alone. I had left Archie with his best friend's family for the afternoon, refusing to let him be anywhere near the toxicity. I parked my sedan behind Ryan's Range Rover, which I noted, with grim satisfaction, had a fresh scratch on the bumper. I walked up the driveway carrying a heavy leather briefcase. It contained 20 copies of a document I had titled the Forensic Audit of the Hart Miller Trust. When I walked into the living room, the atmosphere was suffocating. Aunt Linda sat in her armchair like a judge. My cousins, Mike and Sarah, were on the couch, looking uncomfortable. And there, in the center of the room, sat Vanessa, Ryan, and Rebecca. Vanessa was weeping softly into a tissue. Ryan was pacing, looking agitated. Rebecca was scrolling on her phone, looking bored but petulant. "She's here," Mike muttered. "Sit down, Amelia," Aunt Linda said, her voice stern. "We have heard some very disturbing things from Vanessa. She says you cut off Rebecca's tuition. She says you're trying to evict them. She says you're having some sort of mental break." I remained standing. I placed the briefcase on the coffee table with a heavy thud. "I'm not here to argue," I said calmly. "I'm here to clarify." "Clarify what?" Ryan snapped, stopping his pacing. "That you're a vindictive witch. You threatened to call the police on my daughter for driving a car you gave her." "A car I leased," I corrected. "And yes, I did." "See?" Vanessa wailed, looking at Aunt Linda. "She's unstable. She's attacking us for no reason. All we asked for was a little help during a rough patch, and she's treating us like criminals." Aunt Linda frowned at me. "Amelia, family helps family. You have so much, they have so little. How can you sleep at night knowing your niece might be on the street? Rebecca is a straight-A student. She has a bright future. Why would you sabotage that?" "Is she?" I asked, looking directly at Rebecca. Rebecca didn't look up. She shrank slightly into the cushions. "Of course she is," Ryan yelled. "She's on the dean's list." "Open the briefcase," I said. The room went silent. "What?" Mike asked. "Open it, take a packet, pass them around." Aunt Linda hesitated, then leaned forward and undid the clasps. She pulled out the thick, stapled packets. She handed one to Mike, one to Sarah, and kept one for herself. "What is this?" Aunt Linda asked, adjusting her reading glasses. "Page 1, I announced, my voice projecting clearly like I was in a courtroom. "A comparison of the tuition invoices sent to me by Vanessa and Ryan versus the official tuition rates of the university. You'll notice a discrepancy of $8,000 per semester." I heard Page's rustling. I saw Mike's eyebrows shoot up. "Page 2, I continued, relentless. "Wire transfer receipts. The money I sent for tuition didn't go to the university. It went to a shell company called R&V Holdings, registered to Ryan and Vanessa Miller." "That's a lie," Ryan shouted, lunging forward. "That's doctored." "Sit down, Ryan," Mike barked, standing up. Mike was a contractor, a big man, and he looked furious. He was reading the document closely. This looks like a bank statement, Ryan. It matches." "Page 3, I said, ignoring Ryan's outburst. "The academic transcript of Rebecca Miller." I looked at Rebecca. She was pale now, her phone forgotten in her lap. "Read the bottom line, Aunt Linda," I commanded. Aunt Linda's voice trembled as she read aloud. Status, withdrawn. Reason, expulsion for academic dishonesty, plagiarism. Date, O. October 14th. The silence that followed was heavy, absolute, and suffocating. Expelled, Aunt Linda whispered, looking up at Vanessa. You told me she needed money for finals. You told me she was graduating with honors. Vanessa was shaking her head, her mouth opening and closing like a fish. It was a mistake. The school made a mistake. We're fighting it. You aren't fighting it, I said. You're hiding it. You've been taking thousands of dollars from me for tuition for a school she hasn't attended in 6 months. And finally, I said, my voice dropping an octave, becoming dangerous. Page 4, the police report filed yesterday. Police report, Ryan froze. Identity theft, I said. Someone used my social security number to apply for a Chase Sapphire card 3 days ago. The application came from your IP address, Ryan. The card was mailed to your house. Ryan's face turned a color I had never seen before, a mix of gray and green. He looked at the door. You called the cops, he rasped. I didn't just call them, I said, checking my watch. I told them where you would be. As if on cue, the doorbell rang. The sound shattered the tension in the room. Aunt Linda looked at the door, then at me, then at the weeping Vanessa. Amelia, Aunt Linda gasped. You can't, not here, not at my house. They threatened my son, I said, my voice cutting through her plea like a knife. Vanessa sent me a photo of Archie at his school. She threatened to destroy him if I didn't pay up. When you threaten my child, the family card gets revoked. Mike walked to the door and opened it. 2 uniformed officers stood there. We're looking for Ryan Miller and Vanessa Miller, one officer said. Ryan tried to run. It was a pathetic attempt. He scrambled toward the back patio door, knocking over a vase. Mike simply stepped in his way and grabbed his arm. Don't make it worse, Ryan, Mike said, disgusted. The next 10 minutes were a blur of shouting, Miranda rights, and the clicking of handcuffs. Vanessa was screaming that I was evil, that I had planned this, that I was jealous. Rebecca sat on the couch, crying silently, not for her parents, but for herself. As the officers led them out, Aunt Linda collapsed into her chair, sobbing. The family, the cousins, the aunts looked at me with a mixture of fear and awe. I walked over to the coffee table, closed the briefcase, and snapped the locks shut. I'm sorry it had to happen here, Aunt Linda, I said softly. But the truth has a way of coming out eventually. I just expedited the process. I walked out of the house, past the police cruisers, past the neighbors peeking out of their windows. I got into my car, locked the doors, and took the deepest breath of my life. The fallout was swift and absolute. Because of the amount of money involved, over $150,000 when the forensic audit was fully completed, the district attorney didn't go easy. Ryan, facing multiple counts of wire fraud, identity theft, and forgery, took a plea deal. He was sentenced to 3 years in a minimum security facility, followed by 5 years of probation. He was ordered to pay restitution, though I knew I would never see a dime. Vanessa avoided jail time by turning state's witness against her husband, claiming he coerced her. She received a suspended sentence and 500 hours of community service, but the social sentence was far harsher. The society she desperately tried to impress treated her like a pariah. She lost the house. It was foreclosed on within months. She moved into a small, 1-bedroom apartment on the other side of town and took a job as a receptionist at a dental office. Rebecca faced the harshest reality check of all. With no degree, no funding, and an eviction on her record, she had to move in with Vanessa. I heard through the grapevine that she was working double shifts at a sports bar, trying to save enough money to enroll in community college. I didn't relish their downfall. I didn't celebrate it with champagne. I simply observed it from a distance, like a tragic accident on the side of the highway, and then kept driving. 6 months later, on a warm Saturday evening, I took Archie to dinner. We didn't go to a pizza place this time. We went to Le Jardin. I wanted to reclaim the space. I wanted to overwrite the memory of humiliation with one of dignity. We walked in, and Henry, the maitre d', recognized us immediately. His eyes widened. "Madame," he said, bowing slightly, "it is good to see you again." "Table for two, Henry," I said, smiling. "Near the window, please." He led us to the prime table, the one with the view of the skyline, the one Vanessa had coveted so desperately. We sat down. The linens were crisp, the jazz was soft. Archie looked different. In the 6 months since the toxicity had been excised from our lives, he had bloomed. He stood taller. He laughed more. The anxiety that used to make him twitch and hum had faded, replaced by a quiet confidence. He was no longer the weird cousin. He was just Archie. "This place is fancy," Archie said, looking around. "Are we celebrating something?" I reached across the table and took his hand. "Yes," I said, "we're celebrating us." "Just us?" he asked. "Just us," I affirmed, "and that is more than enough." We ordered the duck. We ordered dessert. We laughed at our own jokes, loud enough to be heard but quiet enough to be polite. No one looked at us with pity. No one relegated us to the corner. We belonged there, not because of who we pretended to be, but because of who we were. Midway through dessert, my phone buzzed. I glanced at it. It was a text from an unknown number. "I just wanted to say I'm sorry, for everything. Rebecca." I looked at the screen for a long moment. I thought about the girl I had loved, the girl who had mocked my son, the girl who was now learning the hard way what it meant to earn her place at the table. For a moment, I considered replying. I considered offering a platitude, or a lecture, or a path to redemption. But then I looked at Archie. He was scraping the last bit of chocolate mousse from his bowl, completely at peace. I realized that my peace was too expensive to be risked on a discount apology. I didn't block the number, I just deleted the message. I put the phone away, signaled for the check, and paid in full. People like me don't help people who hurt us. People like me protect the ones who matter. And as we walked out into the cool night air, hand in hand, I knew we had finally, truly won.